You're not going crazy, Arthur. You're going sane in a crazy world!
Hello, and welcome to Modes of Reasoning 1730B, Reasoning about Social Issues. I am your host. I don't normally talk like this, but when I started shooting this segment, I decided that it might be fun. I like to have fun in my courses, and I hope you have fun as well. We'll see how long I can keep this up. In this introductory lecture, I'm going to be explaining how the course works, the format, the schedule, the assignments, the course goals, and what I like to call the overall narrative of the course. Now, because these lectures are pre-recorded or, in university talk, asynchronous, since in university, how would you know that you are getting your money's worth without unnecessarily obscure terminology? Since the lectures are pre-recorded, you're not going to be able to ask me any questions, but I'll do my best to anticipate some of them. And we can look forward to being interrupted from time to time by my cat. Cats do not so much ask questions as demand answers. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Jay Keeping. I know it says Joseph on the website, but I don't particularly care for that name. You can call me Professor or Dr. Keeping if you wish, although if you do, I'll probably look a little bit uncomfortable. How about if you just call me Jay instead? It's easy to spell, just one letter. So, I'm a human, as you've probably guessed, and I've been teaching at York for approximately 200 years. There are also 3 teaching assistants, or TAs, as I believe you call them in the colonies, although I find that term misleading because they're not so much assistants as just having a different job from me, the course instructor. That means that I'll be delivering the lectures and they will be responsible for the tutorials as well as grading your assignments. Ah, this would be a good time to mention that one thing that differentiates universities from colleges and high schools is that the people who are teaching you are normally also researchers, hopefully in the area that they're teaching, something close to it. Anyway, the idea is that you get to learn from the same people who are coming up with the stuff that you're learning. Yes, you're getting it firsthand from the experts, so to speak. This applies to your TAs as well as to your professors, by the way. In fact, a lot of the most important and innovative research is being done by the people leading your tutorials and grading your assignments. This is because normally they're working on their PhDs and at the beginning of their careers, so they have to establish themselves, whereas old people like me can generally coast on seniority and bad acting. So, speaking of research, most of my research has to do with minds and bodies, and how what we call our minds are not actually inside our heads like you're taught at school, but actually complex systems of interactions between bodies and environments and other people. In fact, I'd argue that most of what you think of as yourself is actually other people. You'll get to meet your TAs and hear about their research in your tutorial. And that is a good segue into talking about the delivery format of the course. This is what we call a blended course, meaning that the lectures will be pre-recorded, but the tutorials will be live on campus and in person. The lectures will consist of a combination of new material and clips from previous times I've taught this course. I will also, from time to time, be utilizing material from other sources, such as YouTube, when I judge that to be more effective or just more engaging. So, what is this course and what is it for? What's with this weird name, modes of reasoning, reasoning about social issues? What is a modes of reasoning exactly? Well, modes of reasoning is part of a suite of courses devoted to general education. General education, or Gen Ed, is part of York's unique approach to higher learning. The goal of general education is to make you a critical thinker. Critical thinking is sometimes considered the purview of philosophy, which is why modes of reasoning is run by the philosophy department. But we think that critical thinking is something that everybody needs, regardless of your field or specialization. In fact, I think it's the most generally applicable skill there is. What is critical thinking? Well, people think that they know how to think, but actually, people are quite bad at thinking. Think of thinking like cooking. When you ask someone if they can cook, what you're actually asking is whether they can cook well. Anyone can heat food, but preparing a delicious and nutritious meal is something you have to be taught how to do. It takes time, it takes learning, it takes work. And so it is with thinking. Specifically, critical thinking consists in looking at the reasons behind our beliefs in order to determine whether those reasons constitute a sufficiently good basis for holding those beliefs. Or to put that a different way, critical thinking consists in determining why certain beliefs are held and whether those beliefs are well-founded. The purpose of critical thinking is to arrive at either the true or at least the best supported view on any given topic. The value of this should be obvious. All of our beliefs and everything that we do is because of reasons. Well, hopefully it's because of reasons. Whether it's deciding what to put on in the morning or deciding whether to get married, we'll have reasons for our choice, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Being able to identify our reasons, for they may not be obvious, and determining how good they are is essential if we wish to be correct in our beliefs and wise in our actions. Viewed this way, critical thinking is the most generally useful skill one can have, which is why I said that a moment ago. I don't know why I'm repeating myself. Anyway, critical thinking is such a big deal that we, in the general education business, approach it in 3 different ways: critical reading, critical writing, and critical reasoning. Different components of this course target these different areas of critical thinking. So in the first part of the course, we focus on reading texts. Most information comes to us in the form of texts, but a lot of texts, especially those we read on that thing we call the internet, can't be trusted. But some of them can. How can we tell the difference? That's what you're going to be learning. Believe it or not, I can usually tell whether a text merits belief just by reading it. This is because I have lots of knowledge and practice and skills honed by being a person who cares about whether things are true or whether things are true or false for, let's say 20 years. Obviously, I can't transmit to you 20 years of experience in one course, but I'm going to do my best. Generally, university courses focus on teaching some sort of content, and you sort of pick up skills by processing the content. This course is different. This course targets the skills themselves, which is why it's possible for you to acquire 2 or 3 degrees worth of critical thinking skills in a single year-long course. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I am going to do my best to make it fun. The second part of this course focuses on critical reasoning. You're going to be learning how to analyze and evaluate arguments. Critical writing will be the last third of the course, where you're going to be applying what you learned in the first 2 parts to formulating your own arguments in the form of essays. The back end of this course is quite writing focused, you see. Writing is an essential component to complex reasoning. Our stupid monkey brains can't handle too much information at once, so writing functions as a kind of externalization of reasoning. It's like the page is like an extra brain. This is actually related to the field of research that I was talking about at the beginning of my introduction, where I was talking about the sort of thing that I do in my professor time. It's called the extended mind thesis or the extended mind hypothesis, but don't worry about that. What you need to know is that I'm going to be showing you how to write the two main kinds of essays that you have to write in university: critical essays and argumentative essays. This will include such things as how to do research and how to revise your essays. These skills are designed to act as a kind of foundation for your other courses. Ideally, you should be taking this course, this modes of reasoning thingy course, in your first year. Like I said, this course targets a lot of things that normally you pick up in little bits over the course of doing your degree, so it's most useful at the start of your studies. That is, you get the most out of it if you take it in your first year. If you're in your third or fourth year, some of this stuff, especially the stuff surrounding writing essays, may be things that you've heard before. In that case, though, there'll still be plenty of interesting things to learn in the rest of the course. Let's talk a little bit about our e-class page now. This is what it looks like, or more precisely, this is what it looks like to me. This is the instructor setup. The setup for students may be slightly different. I'm not really sure. Nevertheless, I'm sure that it's close enough that I can show you around a little. So this is basically the main page for the course. You can see at the top, there's a general section for things like the course syllabus, which is here, and for course announcements. Announcements are emailed to everybody in the course. So if I make an announcement, you should get it in whatever email address that you're using to access the course. I have organized the e-class page according to the week's format. So as you can see, week of 2nd of September, and it says this week, even though you will be viewing this on the 9th of September. Oh well. So stuff for each week will be posted under these weeks. There's not a lot here because the course is in progress. And this, in case you hadn't noticed, is the beginning of the course. Under each week, you will find the things that you need for that week. Things like readings or PowerPoint presentations, things that go with the lecture or the topic for that week. Notably, you will find the lecture recordings. This is actually a stand-in for the first week's lecture recording, since I'm recording the actual lecture now and I don't have the ability to travel forwards and backwards in time. Not yet. If you want to view the week's lecture, you can click on it like this, and here it is. Well, who is that? That doesn't look very much like me. Let's check it out. Well, isn't that nice? If only all of the lectures could be a purring cat instead of listening to me talk. Oh well, c'est la vie. This is my cat Mia, by the way. I don't know if you can tell, but she is extremely cute. You will also see here a link to my online office hours. Oh, wait. It says that in the script, but I haven't actually gotten around to creating the link to my online office hours. Oh well, I will do that. It will very likely be there by the time you view this lecture. So I'm going to keep talking as if it's actually there. So as I was saying, you will also see here a link for my office hours. I'm going to be holding online office hours and live in-person office hours at the same time because I'm just that good. It's not hard, actually. It just means that I'm going to have the Zoom call open at the same time as I'm going to be in my office with the door open. And all you have to do is, at the right time, click this link, which is absolutely, definitely here. What is the right time? Well, my office hours are video lectures will be posted here to the thing on or before midnight on the Sunday of the week. So, for instance, this is going up Sunday, September 8th for the week that starts Monday, September 9th. And so the second week's lecture will be up on Sunday, September 15th for the week that starts Monday, September 16th. See how that works? I am thinking of the lecture recordings in terms of two 50-minute lectures each week. This is because if this course were being taught live and in person, there would be 2 lecture hours plus the tutorial, which makes 3. You are paying for 3 hours of teaching per week. But because of inflation, each of those hours is actually only 50 minutes. Not really because of inflation, because normally you need that 10 minutes to get to your next class. Since these lectures are going to be pre-recorded and you don't have to view them at any particular time, I could theoretically make them as long as I want, but I am not that cruel. So I'm going to be aiming for about 100 minutes of content each time, which you can think of as 2 50-minute lectures, 50 plus 50. In fact, if it's over an hour, I have to split it up because I find that larger uploads, eClass has a problem with the larger uploads, so I have to upload them into parts. Did you know that you can download these lectures? For example, go here and you can right click on it and you can like save videos. You could save it to watch later, to have it on your maybe on your phone while you're on the subway and you don't have an internet connection. I don't know. Where was I? Oh yes, content. So you can think of it as 100 minutes of content or the same content as 2 50-minute lectures. It doesn't really matter. As a matter of fact, my experience has been that in one of these lecture videos, I can get through an hour's worth of material in about 30 minutes. It turns out that my video lectures are a lot more information dense than my regular normal live lectures, And this is largely a function of editing. It turns out that if I edit out all of my pauses and ums, it's like 10 or 15 minutes shorter. Another reason why it ends up being shorter is that there's no questions or discussions, which is a shame. I usually enjoy lectures a lot more when people participate. And while I'm on the topic, I can't help but notice that you're being awfully quiet in this conversation. Of course, you will still get the opportunity to ask questions and have discussions because that's what the tutorials are for. This system of the pre-recorded lectures combined with live tutorials done by people who are not me was not my idea. However, it does have certain advantages. For example, maybe your tutorial leader is much more fun and charismatic than me. Who knows? Normally, most of reasoning is taught in a 3-hour time slot, and the lecture and tutorial stuff would be integrated. Often, when I've taught this course live in the 3-hour format, or as I prefer to think of it, properly, normally I'd have specific activities for you to do, either individually or in groups. Having separate tutorials on a separate day, taught by a separate person, well, that's different. It might be just as good or better, but it is different, and it is going to require a bit of tinkering with the format. This means I may be trying things that I haven't tried before, and they might not always work out well. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that if sometimes you find that the tutorial time isn't being well utilized or a tutorial activity isn't very effective, that's most likely going to be my fault and not the fault of the TAs. For example, I haven't actually planned a tutorial activity for this week. Now would be a good time, and absolutely not because I'm trying to change the subject, to have a look at the course syllabus. So as here is the course syllabus, and as you can see, here are all the tutorials with the rooms and the codes. Down here, you will find the schedule of lectures and topics for each week. So you will see that for each week, there is the topic, and also sometimes, but most of the time, the reading or readings, and also sometimes an assignment for the weeks that we have an assignment. More on that later. I am going to be posting 2 E-class selections, chapters from various different sources, which I am allowed to do under the rules of fair use so that you don't have to pay for them. The rule is, if you're interested, you can use one chapter from a book and you don't have to pay them as long as you don't use any other chapters in the same course. So I had to come up with different chapters. Some of these are not even whole chapters. They're just a couple of pages from a variety of books. And oh boy, wasn't it a lot of work? I do complain a lot, don't I? Sometimes there will be assignments, as you can see here. For instance, week 3, which is only 2 weeks from now, there is the first assignment. It's called the critical reading assignment, and there isn't much point in going into detail about what it is or what it requires. Basically, I can say this. I'm going to be demonstrating skills in these lectures, and then I give you assignments where you practice these skills, because skills you can only learn through practice. I was just attacked by a cat. That was extremely painful. I knew this was going to happen. Inevitably, she does this. Interrupts me while I'm trying to do a video lecture. She's actually telling me that it's time for me to go to bed. So this is I'm calling this a syllabus draft. We have essays in this course. Yes, sorry about that. We have essays. I didn't want to. York made me. So there are 2 essays due in the second half of the course. As you can see here, I'll highlight it. One of them is due the week after reading week. The second essay is due on the last class. To say that again, probably more clearly, there are 2 essays in this course. There's going to be a critical essay and an argumentative essay. I'll tell you what those are and how they're different later on when it's relevant. Now I'm going to go over the evaluation scheme and talk a little bit about the assignments, and then we'll be done, I promise. Okay, so as you can see, there's a bunch of graded components to the course. One of them is the fallacy test. This will be written in your tutorials, and it will be the week of December 2nd, the last week before the Christmas break. Near the end of the first term, we're going to be spending 3 weeks talking about fallacies, which are I've lost the ability to speak. We're going to be talking about fallacies, which are specific named problems with arguments. They're going to be fun, I promise. So there will be a fallacy test at the end of the first term, where basically you get a bunch of short texts containing arguments and you try to find the fallacies. It's fun. And that will be administered during the tutorials. Now I'd like to talk about the component called assignments and exercises. This is basically homework. I told you earlier on that this is a course about skills, and I'm going to be showing you certain skills, and then I'm going to be assigning you assignments or homework. I don't like to call it homework, for you to practice those. These are going to be graded by your TAs. They will be worth 2.5% each. And because of the number of them, that comes to 20%. But you will notice that this component is worth only 15%. And yet the total of the assignments is 20%. This means that you can get up to 20 out of 15 on this component, which can have a powerful overall effect in raising your final grade in the course. But that's not the main reason why it's there. The main reason why it's there is because I wanted to make it possible for you to miss 1 or 2 of the assignments and still get the full 15%. But if you really want to, you can do all of them and get that boost in your mark. Hooray. As you can see, there is a 15% component assigned to tutorial activities. The tutorials will also be an opportunity for you to practice the skills that are covered in class, and sometimes there will be structured activities, and sometimes the tutorials will be more free-flowing, like an opportunity for you to ask questions and have spontaneous discussions. It will really be up to your TA. This course has a whole bunch of TAs, and they are very experienced, and they will be explaining to you what you need to know about the tutorials. Although officially I have the final authority and responsibility for what happens in the course, including the tutorials. In practice, I think of the TAs not so much as teaching assistants, but like I said earlier on, they're teachers, I'm a teacher, they just have a different set of responsibilities. And so I consider them to have autonomy with respect to their tutorials. So, who wants to talk about AI? AI, or artificial intelligence? No, no, wait, I'm going to drop the accent. This is serious business. I'm required to address the topic of using ChatGPT and other large language models. Large language model is the name for the kind of thing that ChatGPT is. I was asked to address the topic of using these things to write essays. So, since we have to talk about that anyway, I thought that I would give you a sample of the kind of critical thinking and debunking we're going to be doing in this course. And to be honest, the lies about so-called artificial intelligence are so widespread that I sort of feel like I'm obliged to bring it up as a public service. The thing that I'm required to say on the topic of using ChatGPT or other LLMs to write your essays is don't. If you do, that will be considered a breach of academic honesty, like plagiarism or paying someone to write your essay for you. There are other and perhaps more compelling reasons not to use ChatGPT to write your essays, and we'll be getting to those in a moment. But first, the first thing you need to know about AI or artificial intelligence is that it doesn't exist. Let me be more specific. In real life, the term artificial intelligence refers to a bunch of fields in computer science research, including stuff like machine learning, large language models, robotics, and more. In science fiction, though, artificial intelligence or AI usually refers to machines that are intelligent in the way that people are intelligent, like HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey, or the droids from Star Wars. Also Data from Star Trek.
From you, Data, you are fully functional, aren't you?
Machines that are intelligent in the way that people are intelligent don't exist outside of science fiction. Despite what you may have been told, stuff like ChatGPT or any of the other products being labeled as AI and shoved into everything nowadays are no more intelligent than a pocket calculator. Uh, do, do those still exist? Do you guys know what a pocket calculator is? Let me try again. What people are calling AI nowadays has no more intelligence than an iPod Nano. But don't take my word for it. I'm going to let an astrophysicist named Angela Collier, who works with AI in real life, explain this in more detail.
So AI doesn't exist, actually. Apparently, we've all just decided to call it that. That's kind of annoying. I understand how this happened. There's an area of research in computer science called artificial intelligence, and under that umbrella is like your machine learning, your neural networks, and your deep learning. And so when people make tools using those concepts, they call it artificial intelligence. But that's confusing for the people, because if you put in a headline like AI is a thing that you have to worry about now, people actually think AI exists, even though it doesn't. So this video is not going to be a discussion on AI or how to use it or how to make your own machine learning program. I'm not a computer scientist, actually. I got my PhD in physics and I specialized in astrophysics, and machine learning is really big in astrophysics, and I am going to use artificial intelligence and AI and machine learning interchangeably in this video. Well, I have taken the courses and I've done those little workshops, and I work with AI and machine learning tools at my job. I'm not a computer scientist. That's not what this is. In fact, I'm only going to give the explain like I'm 5 definition of an AI, a machine learning tool. All right, imagine you have 100,000 pictures and they're of all the things like buildings and vehicles and nature and animals, and you want all the pictures of cats. You can't look through 100,000 pictures. That would take way too long. So what you're going to do is you're going to write a computer algorithm that will sort through the pictures for you. And so when you ask it for cats, it gives you all the pictures of cats. Great. How do you do that? First, you get a subset of pictures, maybe like 400 pictures. And inside that subset, there are 15 pictures of cats. And you label them all cat, not a cat. Okay, and then you give that data set, that smaller data set, to the computer program, and you say, hey, teach yourself how to recognize the correct answer. Look for patterns in the pictures of cats so that when I feed you this data set, you throw out all the pictures except for the pictures of cats. It's machine learning. You're not telling it how to identify cats. You're only telling it, these are cats, these are not cats. And the computer algorithm will teach itself to look for patterns and identify the cats. Great, you've done it. Now you want to test it. So you have a second set of pictures. This time you know which are cats, but the computer's not going to know which are cats. You feed it and you say, hey, use that machine learning tool you just made about cats on this data set. And if it gets all the cats, yay, you have a cat finding machine learning program. And so now you can give it all 100,000 pictures and it will find all the cats. We did it. But there's a problem. You see, that's a machine learning program. It's not a artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence doesn't exist, actually. I can highlight this issue for you. You are a human person and you have intelligence, right? Here's a bunch of cats. Pick all the cats. Okay, I assume you did something like this. Okay, if I gave that same exact test to the computer, it would give the same answer, probably more quickly. But what if there was like a little stuffed cat? You see it? And you didn't click it. I wanted you to click it. That's a cat, right? It's a stuffed cat, but it's a cat. If I'm talking to a person, I could say, hey bud, you didn't click that stuffed cat. And you would say, oh, I thought you just wanted the animal. Do you want me to click stuffed cats? And I would say, yeah, like all cats. So if there's like a Yeti bottle with a cat sticker, or someone's got a cat tattoo, or you see a little statue of a little cat, click all those too. And because you're a person with intelligence, you would say, got it, great. But what if I wanted to tell the computer, like, hey, I want you to do stuffed cats too, all cats, everything that even resembles a cat a little bit, I want you to find that and call it a cat. I can't actually do that. I can't say, hey, machine learning tool, you missed this one. Why didn't you call this a cat? I don't know how it decided what was cats. There are computer scientists who will be angry at me for saying this, but this is a black box program. I fed it a bunch of images. It learned how to identify cats somehow. I don't know how. It's looking for patterns. It's not intelligent, and it spits out the cats. And when I find an error, like, hey, this stuffed cat is a cat, I can't ask it to recognize this as a cat. What I have to do is get a new data set with tons of little pictures of cats and feed it back through and say, hey, also these are cats, okay? So when I do my test a second time and I give you these images, you're gonna say, all these are cats, and I'm gonna be like, great job, you're so smart, you did it, gold star. If I gave this to the computer, it would find all the animal cats, because we already know it can do that. Now it's got the new data, I retrained it, and it will find these cats, but it's also gonna call this a cat. Because when I fed it this picture, it was like, okay, long cylindrical glass things are cats, this is a cat, right? And that's what I mean when I say it's not intelligent. I can't easily tell my machine learning program, like, oh buddy, like you can see a cat, this is also a cat, right? The same way you would converse with a human. These programs are great, they're interesting, they're useful, but they're not AI. And yet we're calling it that. That seems like it'd be a problem for science communication, right? What if you're doing medical research? You give your machine learning program 100,000 images of, like, from MRIs of like people's lungs, and you're like, some of these have tuberculosis, some of these don't. And what you can do is see if the computer gets better at diagnosing tuberculosis from an MRI than doctors are. And what do you know? They've done that and the computers are better. Great. So now, if you're researching how symptoms of tuberculosis develop so you can start diagnosing it earlier, you can try to figure out the pattern that this machine learning program is finding. Like, how exactly is it making this diagnosis? Now, this is very hard. Remember, you can't ask the program, like, why did you make this decision? And it gets even harder when you do your neural networks and your deep learning and all that stuff. It's hard to figure out, like, what exactly made you say this had tuberculosis? You can't ask. Through a lot of A/B testing, putting up two images that are almost identical, the doctors were able to figure out how the computer program was identifying tuberculosis more often than human doctors. And it turns out that the machine learning program was weighting the age of the machine that took the image. So if it was an older machine, it would say that it's more likely to be tuberculosis. And that's just by the virtue of the fact that older machines are at places where there's more tuberculosis. It's not intelligent, actually. That's a useless piece of information, right? I mean, it's helpful if you are a medical doctor. If you're diagnosing someone, it is important to know if they have recently been to somewhere where there's tuberculosis, and then you would be more likely to test them for that. But if you are a researcher trying to look for early signs of tuberculosis, like the age of the MRI machine is useless information to you. Imagine a group of 9-year-olds. What is that, like 4th grade? They're gonna go to the library for some unsupervised learning. And the teacher, he says, hey kids, I want you all to write a 2-page paper on a historical figure. So the hero of our story, Sophie, decides to write her paper on Pocahontas. And instead of spending her time researching this on the internet or going to find an encyclopedia or like one of those little golden books, she gets on her mom's ChatGPT account, which costs like $59 a month. And she says, please write a 2-page paper on the historical figure Pocahontas in the style of a 4th grader. Now, ChatGPT is a machine learning tool. The data it's been fed is basically the internet, okay? And what it will do is take samples of text from all over the internet, rearrange them, rewrite them, like thesauricize them, and stuff them into a new paper that looks like a human wrote it. ChatGPT's goal is to make text that looks as if a human wrote it. ChatGPT's goal is not to make text that makes sense, actually, but like that's for another day. So Sophie prints it out and it looks very much like a paper. And she's like, fantastic, I've done it. She goes home and she starts to feel bad because she's the hero of the story. And so she starts reading her paper and she's like, oh, because she notices that 2 paragraphs of this paper are about how she can speak to trees and her best friend is a little raccoon and she's the only human ever to learn all languages from the colors of the wind, blue corn moon, etc. This is a problem, right? She asked for a paper on the historical figure Pocahontas and ChatGPT was like, I looked on the internet for Pocahontas and I found the scripts of Pocahontas 1 and Pocahontas 2. So she could get back on ChatGPT, which costs like $100 a month for this garbage that it spits out. And she could say, please write me a 2-page paper on the historical figure Pocahontas in the style of a 4th grader. Do not include any information after 1991. When did Pocahontas come out? Like 97? So she could work around that and she would have to read it. She would have to go through it. She would have to spend a couple hours with ChatGPT getting it to print out something that looks like a 4th grader wrote it and also has factual information. Or she could take out her little tablet and she could just fact check every single line of text that ChatGPT had picked out and remove all the lies and replace it with information that is true. And that's another big misconception about AI right there. For some reason, people think because it's a computer, it cannot lie to you. When with AI, there is no fidelity. It will just lie. It will make up information. The goal is not to be a fact checker or tell you the truth. The goal of ChatGPT is to write text as if a human wrote it. And even if it lies, it still is successful. It meets its goal. Think about Sophie again. She could have gone to the library and spent her 2 hours reading Wikipedia and writing a paper, but instead she tried to save time and just asked ChatGPT. If she had turned in that ChatGPT paper, she would have gotten an F. So instead, she had to fact check every single sentence, rewrite it, rearrange it, and she probably spent 3 hours total.
So you see why it's a bad idea to use ChatGPT to write your essays, even if you're convinced that you're not going to get caught? The truth is, ChatGPT doesn't actually write essays or anything else. It doesn't write. What it does isn't writing, it's generating text. Writing an essay is a matter of communicating ideas to your reader. ChatGPT doesn't have a mind, artificial intelligence doesn't exist, so it doesn't have any ideas. And this comes across in the text. It's vacuous. If you hand in an essay that was written by an AI tool and somehow you don't get caught or they can't prove it, it's still going to be a bad essay and you're still going to get a bad grade. Now, the things that Angela mentions, like how you don't know if anything an AI tool tells you is true, wouldn't be such a problem if the people trying to sell them to you were transparent about it. It would be a lot better if they called these things not AI, but AI tools, like Angela does. That would make it clear that LLMs and machine learning tools and all that are things that people can use to supplement their cognitive abilities, like calculators. And from here on in, I'm going to use the term AI tools when I'm talking about the things that actually exist in order to distinguish them from the sci-fi stuff. I used to write sci-fi semi-professionally, by the way, so I'm also pretty familiar with that discourse. Anyway, for some reason, OpenAI, Google, and everybody else who wants to sell you these AI tools really want us to believe that their products are more like the sci-fi version of AI than what they actually are. Manufacturers have always exaggerated the powers of their products, but this is conspiracy level stuff. They will, and frequently do, just lie to you. And that's another reason why I decided to talk about it here, because it's an example of the kind of media literacy and logical self-defense that is a big part of what this course is about. Here is one of the most famous documents from the creators of the AI craze, an open letter they put out in 2023 calling for a 6-month pause on AI research. They say AI, but what they mean is just chatbots and not the various different fields of research that get called AI. They want this pause because, according to them, they're afraid that researchers might create the Matrix or Terminator situation that threatens all of humanity. Seriously, that's what they're saying in this letter. Quote, should we develop non-human minds that might eventually outnumber, outsmart, obsolete, and replace us? Should we risk loss of control over our civilization? Unquote. Now that's pretty weird, given what we've already learned, that all ChatGPT does is create text that looks like it was written by a person, and there's no intelligence inside it at all. It's strange, isn't it? Look at the first sentence. AI systems with human competitive intelligence can pose profound risks to society and humanity, as shown by extensive research and acknowledged by top AI labs. How, I ask you, how can there be extensive research on AI systems with human competitive intelligence when nothing remotely like that even exists? Well, they have a footnote which is supposed to be telling you where they got their information so that you can go read it for yourself if you want to, instead of trusting their word for it. It's called On the Dangers of Stochastic Parrots. Can language models be too big? Want to guess what happens if we do go look at this other article, though? Place your bets now. Here is the paper. The language is kind of dense, so I'm just going to read you a couple of relevant passages. Here's one. I've highlighted it. Text generated by an LLM is not grounded in communicative intent, any model of the world, or any model of the reader's state of mind. It can't have been, because the training data never included sharing thoughts with a listener, nor does the machine have the ability to do that. So what they're saying here is that the machine does not have the ability to think. And at the top of the next page, contrary to how it may seem, when we observe its output, an LLM is a system for haphazardly stitching together sequences of linguistic forms it has observed in its vast training data, according to probabilistic information about how they combine, but without any reference to meaning. A stochastic parrot. Again, translating that into ordinary language, something like ChatGPT just repeats sequences of words that it's found in its training data without any understanding of meaning, just like a parrot does. There's no reference to AI systems with human competitive intelligence here. In fact, the paper is saying the opposite. The paper is saying that large language models have no intelligence at all. They are incapable of understanding or generating meaning because they work by calculating the statistical likelihood of certain words being found together. Meaning doesn't even enter the picture. It's just the statistical probabilities of the words being found next to one another based on its training data. So as you can see, the research that they cite in support of their claim that we have to worry about stuff like ChatGPT taking over the world says what it actually says is more or less the exact opposite, that systems like this have no intelligence at all. What the hell? Anyway, why do you think they released this letter if it doesn't represent the facts as they stand at all? Well, I can tell you why they released this letter specifically. It's right there in the subtitle. Quote, "We call on all AI labs to immediately pause for at least 6 months the training of AI systems more powerful than GPT-4. Do you get it? No models more powerful than GPT-4. They're trying to quash competition. They have the best LLM right now, so they want to stop anybody else from coming up with a better one because they want to protect their market share." Now, I don't know for a fact why they're lying to you. I mean, why they're lying to you about the capabilities of AI tools more generally. But I am pretty sure that if people knew that you couldn't trust anything ChatGPT says, OpenAI wouldn't be able to charge people $30 a month for it. Did you know that there's a paid version? Somebody in my Dungeons and Dragons group got it. He scanned all of the D&D books into it, but every time he asks it a question, it gives the wrong answer. Why didn't he just look up the answer in the book himself? I don't know. Some people are just, attracted to whatever the latest tech craze is. Speaking of wrong answers, you've probably heard stories about that. Like that time somebody asked Google AI how to make a pizza and it said to use glue. People think that these are just bugs that the creators of the system will iron out in the new update. But that's not the case. This is not the sort of thing that can be fixed. That's because a chatbot is fundamentally unable to tell the difference between true and false information because it doesn't know what information is. In fact, it doesn't know anything because it's just a souped up version of autocomplete. You know, like how when you're writing a text on your phone and the app will try to guess what word you're writing and fill it in for you, often with hilarious results. ChatGPT is like that. The difference is that they've spent thousands of hours and millions of dollars training it. You know, like Angela trained the cat picture detector in her example. But for, everything, not just cats, and for text instead of pictures, but the same general idea. So the reason why LLMs like ChatGPT will never be good for anything besides writing bad essays is the same reason you can't build a skyscraper out of cheese. No matter how good you make the cheese, it's not going to be a building material. No matter how good you make your text predictor, it's never going to be able to think. I'll see you next week when we talk about critical reading. The end. Cut.